Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Welcome, Helen. We'll move on to your Three Waters Bimonthly report, item 8.
Right.
And you want to introduce it with a brief summary, please?
Yes, just to note a couple of things. So, first of all, that water reform has been continuing with some pace, and I know that both elected members and staff have been engaging with various workshops around the country. So there's work going on in the governance space and the design of any proposed new entities. There's work going on in the regulatory space with the new rules and standards, so that's the new maximum acceptable values, and of course the Water Services Bill is on its way through Select Committee, and this council went up and made a submission on that. Also, just to note that the Stimulus Fund program is continuing, and we've made good progress in terms of the wastewater mains. Those builds are, mostly underway. The water supply mains, where all of the detailed design work has been completed, and construction will begin in the next couple of months. And there's a change process that's been put out by Department of Internal Affairs as well. So one of the major projects that we'd put up, we now want to delay so that we align with some roading works, and that there's a change process where we can substitute some other work. And you won't be surprised to hear that we are proposing to put up a couple of reservoirs to accelerate the reservoir program. In terms of...
So Helen, was that all in that tranche 1 funding you're talking about?
Yes, all in the tranche 1 funding. Yeah, so that's in the 40 million that's come across.
Thanks.
And that's to be delivered by March 2022. In terms of the Water Services Bill, the council submission focused on a risk-based approach compared to the mandatory residual disinfection, which means chlorine. Also talked about the importance of source protection, and the fact that our very high quality groundwater means that mandatory physical treatment is not necessary here in Christchurch either. So there were some key points in the bill that were just brought to the attention of the committee in that oral submission, and there were some good questions as a result of those submissions as well. So I thought it was a very good process. And there's a large number of councils submitting, and some themes emerging that I think we might see some change in the bill. And I think that's particularly around the small supplies. So the number of councils who are concerned about responsibility for small supplies coming onto the territorial authorities is huge. And the number of those small supplies has exceeded anyone's expectations. So they started out thinking there were 5,000 of them. Their next estimate was around 20 to 30,000, and now they think there might be more than 70,000 of them around the country. So it's a big ask. The other thing to note, I think, is just incidents in terms of resource consents, and we did have an incident in St Albans Creek where sediment-laden water was released from a construction site that was reported to Environment Canterbury. We haven't had any enforcement action taken, but we have taken remedial action and instructed our contractor to comply with those consent conditions. So the responsibility of council and the responsibilities of contractors is sometimes not so clear with consent compliance, and so we've been doing some training as well for our project managers to make sure that they are upskilled and they're more proactive in this space. The water safety plans in terms of progress, the Christchurch Water Safety Plan, as you know, was submitted just before Christmas, and the drinking water assessors from Y Comply have been going through the process of reviewing that, and we've got 2 workshops set up in April with staff to explore any issues and any questions that they have, so that is still a work in progress. We don't actually have a timeline for when they'll sign that off. There is a statutory timeline, but I don't think that will apply at all. In terms of transgressions, there were no transgressions for drinking water quality in the last couple of months, but of course we did have the major incident at Akaroa with dead animals being discovered in that reservoir. So that happened early in February. We put the boil water notice on, and then the tankers were in Akaroa the next day, and work commenced to put a temporary reservoir tank farm in place. So the tank farm was commissioned middle of March, and then 18th of March that boil water notice was lifted. And now, of course, we're looking at a permanent reservoir replacement there. We are likely, once we've drained and had a look at that old reservoir, we're likely to put it back in service, but as a raw water reservoir. So we'll use it to balance takes from the streams and have raw water, and then from there it'll go into the treatment plant and have 2 new treated water reservoirs at the other end of that treatment plant. So that work is underway. Just as you mentioned, Plan Change 7, in terms of the Land and Water Regional Plan, we have stepped up our nitrate monitoring across the district, and you'll see that we are seeing a trend of increasing nitrates in our aquifers. The nitrate levels are nowhere near the maximum acceptable value. However, we do want to monitor these and keep an eye on them, and we are aware that there may be changes to that maximum acceptable value. So at the moment it's a chronic exposure limit that protects babies. However, the recent research may mean that at the moment it's an acute one. It may be a chronic one that comes in for that research and the association with colorectal cancer. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll report back to you on the next round for that. In terms of water supply operations, water demand is tracking at about its usual level. We have had high demand over the summer, and we have had water restrictions in place, particularly over on Banks Peninsula. So some Banks Peninsula settlements are still at level 4, so that's a complete hosing ban, and that is because of the very dry summer we've had, and indeed an extraordinarily dry March. So there's no prospect of lifting those restrictions anytime soon. We do need some significant rain over there before we can do that. Just a note that the temporary chlorine equipment continues to work well, and the UV at main pump is working outstandingly well, so we're very pleased with that installation. We've got a note in there about response times for water service requests, so those we'll keep those up to date so that you can monitor the trends there, but we have now seen a sustained improvement in those response times, so responding to both urgent and non-urgent water leaks and repairs and outages. So that is good to see. One of the other things you'll notice is we've put in some operational graphs of the monitoring that we do at our major treatment plant out at Bromley, and we'll play around with what information we're giving you here, but what we're wanting to do is give you some better oversight really of how the operation of that plant is going and how we're trending in terms of the consent compliance for that discharge. So there's some information there, and we're happy to take any feedback on that and what's useful and what's not, and we'll try and turn it into something that's perhaps more visually pleasing and easier to read than these that drop out of the instrumentation. Yeah. But it's got some graphs in there, just the major things that we monitor being the biological oxygen demand, suspended solids, E. coli, and total coliforms from that plant. So everything is running well, but it's I think it's good for you to see how well, rather than just take our assurances that that's in place. Another thing to note in terms of wastewater management is that we have just completed a modelling exercise of our wet weather overflow compliance. And the reason we do that by modelling is that the wet weather is not predictable year on year, so our system has to comply with a modelled frequency of overflows, and that can be of course calibrated by observing overflows in particular events. And those compliance statistics are indicating that we've got a few issues in some parts of the city, and that is going to inform the capital program. So we'll target those catchments where we're predicting more overflows, wet weather overflows than the consent allows, and we'll do those works. And there are also some operational changes that we've made to ensure that we remain within compliance. I think the only other thing I would draw your attention to would be the capital program, which is largely continuing as predicted. There are a few projects that have been deferred and some other projects that have been brought forward for various reasons. Some of them are around availability of parts from overseas, so we've still got some issues in terms of COVID and the lockdown, and some parts that are taking a little time to come through, mostly affecting Littleton wastewater. I'm happy to take questions.
Oh, it's a comprehensive report, Helen. Thank you very much. Right, we'll take questions. Andrew, then Yanni.
Thank you. I've got 3 questions on 3 different matters. So the Akaroa reservoir issue, thanks for the update. And thanks also for coming out to Akaroa and fronting that rather heated community meeting. Your comments went down very well, so thanks to you and staff for doing that. A lot of the questions the community asked at that meeting, we responded by saying there's an inquiry underway. And once we've got a report back from that inquiry, we'll be able to provide further information. Are you able to update on the status of the inquiry and how we intend to feed back to the community?
Yes, so our own internal risk and audit group, so Sean Dowes, has conducted a review of the incident and the response, and his final report has just been lodged with Dawn this week. So we'll be able to report to you, or we can do it by memo if you like, rather than wait till the next TWE meeting.
So that report, once it's gone through Dawn, is that able to be shared with councillors?
Yes, I think it probably could, or at least the conclusions and recommendations could.
Yep.
There are some sort of staff disciplinary matters involved, which we would prefer to keep confidential.
Confidential, that's fine.
There are also some recommendations about processes to improve, which are fine to be shared.
Yep. And then will you be turning your mind to how we communicate that back to the community?
Yes, we will.
Thank you. Second matter, page 66, the O'Kane's Bay water supply. Clearly, investigations have led to a thought that there may need to be more budget for this. Looking at the timing, in the last annual plan, we deferred this to financial year 22. Is there anything that we need to consider as part of the current LTP finalisation, or would any changes be able to be taken into account with the next annual plan?
I would prefer the latter. So at the moment, yes, there are some changes to the design of the treatment plant, given the analytical work that's been undertaken in terms of the stream and the water quality from those streams. So once we have those changes, we'll know what the budget implications are, and yes, they can be accommodated through the annual plan.
So that would be a staff bid or a staff suggestion for the 2022 annual plan?
Yes, if we exceed the budget that's available in the long-term plan.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. And then final question, the water supply reticulation renewals programme. We had received briefings in the past, and some matters have been highlighted relating to lead jointed pipes, particularly in the older suburbs of the city. To what extent is this programme prioritising that work on renewal of those lead jointed pipes?
So the cast iron lead jointed pipes are a very small proportion of our total reticulation, so they're less than 5% of the total reticulation. And only a very small proportion of that causes us problems. So it's only where those lead jointed mains are have a dead end and the water sits in the main and then can accumulate levels of lead that are of concern. So we have targeted those, rather than change the prioritisation of the whole program. What we've done is we've targeted those dead end mains, and there are 9 of them which are currently scoped. I think there's 2 that have been completed and a couple of others are underway. So we're replacing those dead end mains as a matter of priority.
Given that had been raised as a matter of priority in previous reports, it might be good for there to be a closing the loop so that we can see when that work's done, or just be getting an update on that particular part of the programme.
So what we're doing is we're continuing the monitoring program across the city to identify where we've got the lead jointed mains, where we've got the dead ends, and where that does result in an increase in lead in the water. And that's a smaller proportion again. Yep. So even having a lead jointed main and a dead end doesn't mean that you've got concerning levels of lead. But in some places they are approaching half of the MAV, or even the MAV in one sample in that 24-hour sequence that we talked about last time. But what we're going to do is we'll put together a report on both the monitoring program, the extent of those mains, and the program for replacement, and we'll bring that to you. So you've got the whole thing in one report.
Excellent, thank you.
So when will that be, Helen? Will it be the next three
Yeah, we
weeks
can bring that
report?
to the next TWE meeting, or again, we can bring it by memo if you like. So that report's in draft at the moment.
Memo is probably okay, I think. All right, thank you.
We'll also update the website because we do have those lead mains mapped on the website, so we can put an update on the website, so it's available for the
That's
public.
good, thank you. So Yanni, and then I think Leanne, you have one, do you? And then Jimmy.
Thank you. Just getting back to the issue of the water safety plan and when we can remove the temporary chlorination. So I was just trying to understand, like, in one of the sections of the report, it talks about that all of our wells had basically been, so sorry, this is page 57. So far, 126 wells have been signed off as secure by the expert in wellhead security. UV treatment's been installed. This is blah, blah, blah. Sufficient to supply Christchurch, Littleton Harbour, Brooklands, Kainga and Wainui, almost entirely from water from secure wells. So just trying to get my head around it. So basically, the thing that we said we would do to take temporary chlorine out under the old water safety plan, we've done everything. It's the new things that they've added since, with the new water safety plan that we've submitted, that includes backflow prevention. Is that basically correct? So
Yes, so there's three things that are driving the use of chlorine in the network. One is where we have a wellhead that well, almost all of our wellheads now been upgraded, as you note,
right.
but not all of them were signed off by the drinking water assessor. So where they have been signed off by the drinking water assessor, there is no chlorine, and that includes, as you noted, Brooklands, Kainga, and some parts of Parklands in the northwest, and large parts of the Rafiti zone. So there's no chlorine there. So those wellheads have been upgraded, and they've been signed off by the drinking water assessor. And there are no issues with the backflow or the reservoirs, which we'll come to. Where the wellheads have been upgraded but not signed off by the drinking water assessor, the chlorine has been reduced from either 1 part per million or 0.5 part per million, whatever the dose was at that pump station, down to 0.2 parts per million. So it's been reduced but not removed because we haven't got the sign-off from the drinking water assessor
Right.
for
But
those
sorry,
wellheads.
just to be clear, we've got the sign-off from an expert.
Yes, we've got a sign-off from an expert in wellhead assessment.
Effectively, under the old water safety plan that we had that was current, before we submitted the new one, that would have been adequate to stop chlorination.
No, under the old water safety plan we had a double sign-off process
We did.
with the drinking water assessor, that's right.
Right.
And that was progressing through the wellheads, and then at a certain point the drinking water assessor stopped signing those off.
Right. And have we had any conversations about whether we could sign off those from the drinking water assessor, given that it's like exactly the same risk, except as the only
Drinking water
difference
assessor will not sign off those wellheads. So
on
now
what basis?
the risk is now to be managed through the new water safety plan, and as you noted, in the new water safety plan there is we continue to have residual chlorine present where we have not fully resolved the backflow prevention
sorry,
issues.
all I was trying to understand, like we've got current infrastructure that we've had signed off by the experts that the drinking water assessor approved and said that's okay.
Yes,
I think what you've just said is that in those zones, the backflow wasn't an issue. We've done all the work around backflow.
completed the backflow and the
So-
reservoir work.
The stuff that's remaining, there's nothing in there that would be the same as the ones that have already been signed off because of the backflow.
That's correct.
So is central that basically the main zone where we're working on the backflow that we can't get?
We're working on the central zone and also the west zone
Right.
and some of Rickerton and also out Ferry Meadway.
So are there any of those zones that we'll get the backflow stuff done within a time frame where we might be ahead of the others and we could ask for them to be, the chlorine to be lifted?
We could ask, but I doubt that we would get them because we have agreed with the Ministry of Health that the risk will be managed through the new water safety plan and through the sign-off of the new water safety plan. It's the new water safety plan that identifies the backflow issue and the reservoir issue, and it's the new water safety plan that we're waiting on approval for.
Right, but if it's such a risk with the backflow in place in those zones where we've upgraded the wellheads, then why don't they force us to chlorinate temporary chlorinate in the other areas that we don't currently have it?
Because we've resolved the backflow in those other zones.
So when we resolve the backflow in the new zones, why wouldn't they sign it off?
So it's we're going on a bit of a circular argument. So we're operating under two water safety plans, if you like. We're operating under our approved water safety plan for the wellheads, and we're operating under our proposed water safety plan for the backflow in the reservoirs.
So, okay, but just in terms of the backflow, so when's the time frame we're expected to get that work complete for the whole city?
Well, we're doing it zone by zone, and most of the work should be completed by the end of June in those zones. There may be some outstanding ones where they're technically difficult, but certainly by the end of the year, all of the backflow work will be completed.
So, is it, and then there's the age testing of the water, which is the other issue. Is that being sorted now?
The age testing of the water is still underway, yes.
It's into 2021.
Yep, and the modelling that's associated with that.
So there's basically no chance of getting chlorination out in the meantime?
So it's already out in some parts of the city?
Well, under the old plan.
Under the old plan, yes. And where we resolve backflow in reservoirs, it's backed off to the 0.2, and if the wellheads have got the double sign-off, it comes out there as well.
So, all I'm trying to understand, like, if we get the certain zones backflow done, rather than wait for the groundwater testing and the other zones to be complete, is there any opportunity to stop the temporary chlorination in certain zones if we get all the work done?
If we've got double sign-off on the wells, yes.
Yeah.
If we haven't got double sign-off on the wells, then it's no.
And has the drinking water assessor definitely said that they won't give double sign-off until we get the water safety plan approved?
That's correct.
And so when are we looking to get the water safety plan approved?
How long is a piece of string?
Well,
That is a very good question. So we'll have the workshops in April, and after the workshops in April, we'll have a much better idea of where the questions are from the drinking water assessors.
Great.
Yeah, it just seems like we're going around in circles with them.
Well, it is.
It is a
little bit.
very difficult process. I mean, I understand there are now 3 approved in the country, and given that there are hundreds of water supplies operated by councils, that's a very small number. So yes, it is a very difficult process to get a water safety plan approved.
Okay.
So would you keep us updated on
And just
that
Denton,
April workshop?
just 2 other questions. One is the water supply or the water integrated water strategy. That's not picked up in this report.
The integrated water strategy? No, I haven't said anything about the integrated water
Right.
strategy in this report.
So we've got an outstanding resolution on the rainwater, and I just was trying to.
Yes, so yes, you've got an outstanding resolution about rainwater, rainwater tanks and grey water tanks.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a memo being drafted by our friends in policy,
Okay.
and we're waiting for some input from the planning people and from the operational people about that, and then we'll bring that to you.
Right, and will we have a chance to discuss options for looking at that and what we can do, like district planning or?
Certainly.
Okay, that would
Certainly.
be really cool. And the only other question was, we did raise questions about Denton as well. Is there a audit of Denton or what happened there, or?
There will be, yes, there'll be an incident report for Denton. So Denton's operating in bypass at the moment, and we're doing the repair work on that reservoir.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
So would the rainwater and grey water tanks fit in with the bylaw work at all?
Should do.
Yeah. So if it does, we need to try and.
Well, we need to get the options back on
Yeah.
what we can do.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at the timing.
yes.
Okay.
I guess my concern is that if we don't get the information ahead of the LTP, that if we want to do stuff, we won't have budget for it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So
what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Yanni. Leanne?
I was going to raise the Akaroa one as well that Andrew raised, so I won't raise the same question, but I just think from the point of these reports, there really ought to have been sort of kind of a call-out box that says, you know, there are issues here, and identifying what some of the issues were. I mean, it took 2 days for, you know, it was happened on a Tuesday. It wasn't until the Friday that the boil water notice was issued. From the advice that we've received, it's doubtful that was actually even required, but that's by the by. It's the delay that's the issue. You're doing a review of it, we know that, but you wouldn't know that from reading this document. So I think the document itself does need to have, this is under review and this is why.
So unfortunately, this document was signed off weeks ago. So it was before the review.
Then
was
it
even
should be
initiated.
added to the report. it should be added to the front of the report.
Update the report.
Update the report so that you get a paragraph in at the front just saying, noted since the time this was submitted. I mean, I don't think a time frame that is required for operational purposes of an organisation is a good reason not to call out what is a significant, let's say, learning opportunity. I'm just reflecting the level of concern that we as governors need to be able to see what questions we should be responding to or asking, and Andrew's rightly asked that in relation to what happens next, because there is a community that want to know the answers as much as every one of us does as well.
Yes.
Yeah. The second question was in relation to nitrate. So, I mean, we raised that at the select committee, but I'm not seeing what, I mean, because 11.3 is the acute level, and I have to say that when we had some advice provided to us, that was the first time I understood the difference between acute and the longer term potential impacts of a lower number. What is the lower number, and are you seeing anything of concern in the nitrate sampling results that you've presented today?
So we have no idea what that lower number should be. The Danish reports were talking about 1, and the Ministry of Health did commission some work to look at that and to consider the evidence and what it means in the New Zealand context, but I haven't seen the outcome of that work.
So we've got averages over 1.
So
in
then
some,
which graph are you looking at?
In some,
oh, sorry.
Page
in
63,
some wells,
are you?
yes.
Yeah, and page 63.
Yeah, I was trying to understand that graph as well. Yep.
It's a table, so it's not a graph.
Oh,
so
sorry,
yeah, but it looks as if I mean, it looks as if we're under the, you know, on average we're under that level that was identified in one study. So you're quite right to say that, but overall you're saying that you looking at those overall results, there's nothing that you would call out. There's really only one, isn't there, that's over, just over.
But then should we
It's
be
enough
looking
for
at
us-
averages? Or
It's enough for us to continue monitoring the trends, and Environment Canterbury, of course, are also monitoring those trends.
Yeah.
And I would expect that the new requirements under the Water Services Bill for a source water management plan, that will be a big focus for Christchurch City, will be those levels of nitrate over time.
I think the select committee did understand the significance of the source water protection issue. Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Thanks.
And they linked it to the national policy, or national environmental standard for source water, which is under review as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so just additional to that, it's a rolling 5-year program of testing.
Yes.
So can you explain what that means? Do you test?
So it means that we can get around every well, every single water supply well every 5 years.
Yeah, and then so your next round is June this year?
Yes, we've got a rolling program, so we're undertaking the sampling every year. Yep. That's
Right. Okay, that's good, thank you. So now I've got Jimmy,
2 questions.
Melanie.
First one, I follow the Yanni the question, particularly Denton Park, the reservoir. Those one, even you mentioned just bypass, but the problem still need to be fixed. So
Yes.
I just want to know when the roof of this reservoir will be replaced, and except this roof need to be fixed, have any other potential problem need to be further repaired. I just want to know what is the time frame,
So
whether we have funding or not.
yeah, so in the west zone, so Denton and Sockburn have got those big round reservoirs with the multi-jointed roofs, and it's those jointed roofs that they failed in the earthquakes catastrophically, so whole sections fell down, and then there was a big repair program from Skirt,
Yes.
which resealed all of those joints. And then about 3 years ago, there was another repair program to improve the sealing of those joints.
Yes.
And what we've now decided is that just patching those joints isn't good enough. We still get small movements, and you get small amounts of water being washed and contaminants being washed in from the rain from following that approach. So what we're doing is the reservoirs themselves are structurally sound.
Yes.
So what we're doing is putting a membrane across the whole roof. So there's a membrane that will cover the whole roof.
Yes.
And we won't have that problem with the joints anymore. And then they'll make sure that that is also secure under the rim. Yes. And then down the side of those, so that if there are any problems on the sides, because the sides are similarly jointed, but of course less water gets at them, those will be resolved as well. So that work should be finished, where are we, April? That should be finished by the end of this month, and then we'll move on to Sockburn.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Thank you, that's good. Second one is a particular Vainui. Those the adequacy report has been, a month, but here your report mentioned staff will review the report, and update all the original water, the safety plan. I just want to know what kind of items, they are not approved by those independent drinking water assessors.
So
Whether some other project probably still the same situation.
So the adequacy reports, what the adequacy reports do is essentially give us a review of our water safety plans against the framework for water safety plans, and
Yes.
tell us whether or not we've met the mark.
Yes.
They are extraordinarily detailed.
Yes.
And at a level that we haven't encountered in the past with the old way of doing it with the local drinking water assessor. So it's mostly around the level of documentation and procedures,
Okay.
and monitoring that where the requirements have increased significantly.
Okay. But this the funding whether will affect us all the like Christchurch, Little River or the Littleton, those all the plan or not, just total separate.
So what the drinking water assessors have said to us is that the requirements of the water safety plans depend on the nature of the water supply,
Yes.
and mostly that's about the population served. So clearly, if you've got a very large city like Christchurch,
Yes.
the risk and the consequences of something going wrong are
Yes.
catastrophic. So a large number of people will be affected, whereas with a very small drinking water supply, say there are only 20 people affected, then it's much less. And so the requirements in terms of the systems and procedures are much less. Although if we talk to some of our colleagues in other units of local government, they're saying that even for the small water supplies, it's a big ask for these water safety plans.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. Phil?
Thanks, Helen. Just a couple of questions. O'Kane's Bay, what it says that it's going to, the cost estimate could be a bit higher. How much roughly higher?
I don't know until they've done the detailed design.
Okay, but it'll be more than the 2.6.
It may or may not be. They're thinking that it will be, yes.
Okay. Excuse me. So we've in O'Kane's Bay, have we got a system there where everyone's got water, obviously, and fire hydrants and all that sort of thing? Is it sort of like a mini city?
I'm not sure if everybody's connected to that supply,
But generally,
but most of them.
there's a reservoir and there's a treatment thing. Okay, that's fine. Now, do the other bays like Little Akaloa and Pigeon Bay, do they have their own little systems as well?
Some of them have private systems and some of them have just household rainwater tanks.
Right. Yeah. Okay. But they do also have treatment things by us. But it's only,
No.
so it's only O'Kane's Bay.
Yeah, so a lot of the smaller bays do not have a council provided
Okay. Yeah,
supply.
fair enough. And are we still trucking water from Akaroa to Devotionals because Devotionals struggle for water? Are they worse off?
We are at the moment, yes.
Yeah, but does that happen quite a lot? Is their supply thing not that good?
They are very small streams, and if you have a dry summer,
Yeah.
we can only take a certain amount from our
Yeah.
consent, and
Yeah.
then we must leave water in the stream for
Yeah, okay.
environmental reasons.
Okay.
So yes, that's a very small stream.
Okay. And I had a good yarn to Aaron about using that tank for raw water. That's sensible, very good idea. And am I led to believe that the City Council is now looking after the water treatment thing at Akaroa rather than City Care?
No, we work in partnership with City Care. So City Care are running that water treatment plant, but we always work closely with them.
Okay, that's right.
Because they have so the City Council has the water safety plan, which defines mostly how that plant is managed. And City Care have their contractors plan, which must respond to the water safety plan to ensure that all of those things are covered off. And then we work with them in terms of the running of that plant. So if there are any issues, they'll give us a call and
Okay,
we'll work through them.
that's right. And lastly, I see we're going to go to Sockburn to put I'll assume a butanol membrane over
The
the tank.
membrane going on at Sockburn, yes.
If we had spent the money on the Denton Park membrane, would it have saved us having that trouble at Christmas time and having to do all this bypass work?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anne?
Kia ora. Thank you, Helen. Just with Denton, so at the moment it's chlorinated, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, so any idea when that might come out, or?
That depends on the water safety plan. So
Right.
the sign-off for the water safety
Okay.
plan and the completion of the backflow work and the reservoir work there.
So timeline, you're not quite sure?
Again, it's if everything is signed off as proposed, it would be this year.
Great, okay, thank you. The section that you have on laboratory and the testing, so there's nitrate tested there, nitrate levels tested there?
Do we do nitrate in our lab? Yes, I think we do.
Okay. At the zone committee last night, they were talking about residents being able to test their wells for nitrates, and I'm wondering, is there any need for any of our Christchurch residents to be doing that at all?
So Environment Canterbury provide really good information to residents and anybody who has private wells and where they can get it tested, and
Right.
certainly we can offer that service through our laboratory, and there are also commercial laboratories that offer those services.
Right, and the best way for people to access that service would be how?
If they call the council, they'll put them through to the
Okay.
lab.
Right, that's fantastic, thank
Yep.
you. And also, just at our way, there's so much going on in terms of stormwater and, retention basins and things. Would it be possible for, if there was I think there is interest from residents to understand what's going on out there, would it be possible for a staff person to come and talk to a residents'
Certainly.
association? Great.
Always delighted to go and talk
Excellent.
to the Residents Association and showcase the work that's being done. Yeah, so the Upper Heathcote, there's an enormous amount of work being
Yes.
done up there
Yes.
with stormwater, and of course there are associated ecological benefits, dog walking, landscape.
Yep, all that.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I'll
Certainly.
continue the conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne. Mel?
This is just back to the nitrates. One was, would it be possible in future reports to actually see the trends over time? Because these are averaged over quite a number of years, which I understand, but would that be possible for us to see? And it's also difficult just to see like the different colours.
On the maps, yes.
Yeah, like I can't tell the difference between 2 and 5.65. And the average results that we've already commented on are relatively low, but some of the maximum results are over that Danish study result. So it would be, I would find it interesting just to see like all the data points if we can, like in a, like how often we go over,
So it's a mix of our monitoring data, Environment Canterbury's monitoring data, rather than just our own.
Yeah.
But yes, so one of the things that we will be required to do as part of the source water protection plan is to put together a monitoring program for nitrates, and I suspect we'll be doing more monitoring for nitrate in the future.
Yeah. So just seeing a spread of the data and some plot would be quite nice.
Would you like? I'm not sure that all of councillors want to see all of those data sets, but would you like to have a session with one of the staff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be good.
All right.
Cool. Thanks.
And yeah, I'd like to be there too.
You'd like to be there as well? Okay, so how many would like a session on the nitrates?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll put together a small workshop, shall we? Yep.
Yep,
Okay.
thank you. Because the other question is, we look at the average and, the maximum is the maximum. So when you have a high reading, that's just not acceptable. And even when you get a maximum of 11.3, which is through the roof as far as I'm concerned, there's going to be readings much higher than that as well. Talk to Kevin Brown, he tests his own well, he gets readings higher than that. He's out out that way somewhere.
Yes, some of those shallow wells do have very high nitrates.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Quite a concern. Okay, Yanni.
Just a little bit off the nitro topic, but on page 83, you've got a nice landscape plan for the Avon River Stop Bank, and this is the Waitaki Street Avon Flood Management. It talks about being aligned with New Brighton Road, Pages Road project, and cycle pedestrian paths, but like, I'm just concerned that the consenting before June 2021, we haven't even discussed the Pages Road Bridge. Like, I certainly haven't seen what the plans are, or New Brighton Road, and certainly I know the MCR, that's not even been approved, the route selection. So can you just help me understand how that is being aligned?
I'll need to come back to you on that. But as I understand it, the project managers from our side and from Transport have been talking and making sure that those works are aligned.
We heard this with respect. We heard this through the land dredging program. There was no alignment. We're now going back to parts of our area that we've done work in to look at cycle routes. So it just seems to me we should be trying to take a one approach and do it properly approach than kind of just talking.
So the Waitaki works are being done because the temporary stop banks are in poor condition along there.
Yeah.
And rather than repair those temporary stop banks and then build these, we prefer to bring forward that part of the build.
Yeah.
So we're not planning to wait for the cycleways work.
But if we at least had approval of, the realignment of New Brighton Road and Pages Road Bridge, and approval of where the cycleway was going, then at least you would know. But at the moment we haven't. Maybe others have, but I certainly have only seen very, very high level concepts for the cycle route selection, and and Pages Road
one of the
Bridge.
MCRs?
Yeah.
Do you know, Mike? No. That's what I'm wondering.
City to see.
Yeah.
No, you guys have seen that high level route selection presentation. Yeah, but you've seen the MCR one. Who's seen it?
'Cause I'm
We
pretty sure
approved
that,
it, have we
I'm
made a
pretty sure that
metropolitan
staff have
project?
got the
we?
message that this is done as a one, everyone's working together for efficiencies and
Well-
design.
But at least if you agree to where it's going, or have some incorporation, like, again, I'll give you the Heathcote River, the Kiwi Rail Bridge, where, we can't talk about it because it's not able to be talked about publicly, but I can send it round to you guys, where the actual route selection has an area where we've done zillions of dollars of work, and we didn't incorporate some things.
So Helen, you can hear Yanni's question. Can you please organise a
Zillions.
memo
Zillions.
that gives us assurance that this has all been treated together for efficiencies?
But
Please.
we just need to know what the decision making is.
They'll always find something. So Helen, I've got a question on page 55 with the water safety plan, and the Christchurch little one, we've got 4 unacceptable risks. And number 4, the civil emergency, earthquake or other large-scale disruption. And our response is we can't do any improvement on that. So longer-term action plans are being developed. So, what do we do about that if there's no improvement to make? Will we not get the plan approved because of that? Can you explain that?
No, so plans are approved. So having an unacceptable risk in the plan doesn't mean that you don't get that plan approved.
Really?
Okay, that's correct.
Oh.
So, but what in terms of a major earthquake in Christchurch, that is regarded as an unacceptable risk because we would have major disruption and the potential for contamination of the supply, as we did after the earthquakes here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have sufficient money to build the resilience and the infrastructure to withstand an event like that, and nor would it be a good expenditure of money to do so. So what we do have in place are the response plans, but even the response plans that we have in place will take time to reinstate the supply to parts of the city, depending on how much disruption there is. So that does remain an unacceptable risk in terms of the consequences for the people of the city. However, it's one that we do what we can, and then we live with it, if you like.
Right, well that's interesting that it doesn't stop us getting the plan approved.
No, it doesn't stop us
Sounded
getting
like
the plan
it would.
approved. So there's nothing we can do to sort of prevent the earthquake.
Yeah,
So
it's our response to it that matters.
It's our
isn't
response to it, yes.
it? Okay, and then in the bylaw review, you've got there's implications on Te Waihora and its catchment. Can you explain that? It's on page 52.
No, I can't. I'd have to get one of the team to come back to you. Sorry,
Okay,
I haven't got that level of detail.
just a
with
memo
me.
would be fine. That's good.
Okay.
Thanks. And what about these? You mentioned the wet wipes in there too. Are they still a problem? Are people still flushing those?
They are indeed.
Has been no reduction in that?
Well, there's been very little change. So here in Christchurch, we don't have as many problems as some other cities do, but yes, people are still flushing all sorts of things down the sewage system that they should not. And wet wipes are the worst.
That's a shame, isn't it? Because it costs us a lot of money. And the other thing is just with our other 50% of our tranche 1 funding, what's the timeline to receive that? You might have said that earlier, I can't remember.
Oh, we receive it as we spend it. So we've got the 20 million up front, and as we spend that and then deliver on the projects, and we report up to the Department of Internal Affairs, they pay us back.
Right. And we have to have the whole thing done by March 2022.
That's correct.
40 million spent, or
Yes.
at least tagged.
Spent.
Right. And we're on track for that?
Yes, we are.
And what about tranche 2?
I
I heard a whisper that funding might not be as real as it was going to be.
I haven't heard any whispers about tranche 2, so
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
I'm not sure what's happened
And you have to opt
tranche
in.
2,
You have
and
to
it may have the central government's thinking may have evolved.
Right. And you have to stay in to get that anyway.
That was the original proposal. Yes, that tranche 2 was available when people opted in, as it were.
Great. All right. Any other questions on Helen's report? Aaron?
Yeah, a couple. Just then when you were saying trench 2 though, Helen, Phil's ears are still ringing from the weekend and he thought you were saying trench 2 and he was going to come up with another one to help.
You meant to say tranche.
Yeah. But anyway, that aside, on the wet wipes, have we looked at potentially doing a campaign with the supermarkets and that, where we clearly either put a sticker on the packets or we put some signage up where they sell them, telling people not to put them down the toilet?
Let's step into the end space.
Well,
There has been-
people don't read the packets. That's why we do boil water notices, because on every container of baby formula it says to boil the water before you make the formula. Most people don't. They just take it out the tap and shake it up and give it to the baby. But it says it on the tin.
So
Why
what
we have
have we
Blue
done
Baby?
in the past? Have we run campaigns on, like,
We haven't run any campaigns, but there are
if it
campaigns
doesn't spin the
nationally.
rest of the table's wheels, we'll just leave it and just keep doing it the way we're doing it, because
a
that's
tough
not
one?
working.
It's really hard one changing behaviour too.
Yeah.
You know that. Just ban the wet wipes, I'd say.
There is another thing where people just don't know. I mean, just because it's
yeah.
written on the back of a packet in small print that you shouldn't put it down the toilet doesn't mean people don't. Like, they have a competition out at Bromley. What's the wettest thing that turns up every year that's made it through the pipes?
Okay.
We should get the pictures.
Thanks, Aaron. Is that your final question?
No.
No, okay.
Yeah. So the other one is around the wellheads, where you've got the 126 signed off, and then you've got the other work is underway with the further 3, planning and design for the other 12 is underway. Is that all of them at that point?
Yes.
So there's only 12 left?
Yes.
Oh yeah. And what's the completion date for the work on those?
Well, some of those may in fact be abandoned, and we'll bore new wells.
So then there'll still be more wells to do?
It's the most difficult ones that are left now,
Right.
and yeah, a number of those are likely to be abandoned.
But then we do other ones?
We do other wells, yes.
Right.
So we've got a new well drilling program underway.
So how many wells are in that?
At the moment, I think we've got 5 that are underway.
And then once those 5 are finished, that's all our wells done?
we've got a rolling program of new wells. So as the city grows and we require more water
Right.
and more water in different places,
So there'll always be more wells.
there'll always be more wells. Yes.
Right. So how many new ones a year do we roll out? But once all the other ones are done, there'll be 2, 3 a year?
Usually 1 to 3 a year.
Cool. Thank you.
What's the cost of drilling a well? Obviously varies how deep it
It
is.
varies around $1 million to drill and develop a well.
So do DCs cover that?
million.
In
They
And a new
would contribute to it for brand new development, but at the moment most of it is sort of retrospective. So the Bexley pump station, for example, has got a new well field. The Ben Reveri one, which is replacing Bexley, has got a new well field. We've drilled new wells at Mays. We're drilling new wells at Redwood. So they are to replace
Right.
older wells
Yeah.
in existing
So-
reticulated areas.
So that number of the $1 million, does that include all the hardware?
Yes,
So that's everything, all the gear.
yes.
Goes with it. You just turn it on at the end. You got water. Cool.
well, thanks, Helen. That's been a really interesting discussion this morning, at least I think it has been. Really good report, thank you. And we've got those actions to come back. I'll go over those with you at the end. That's all the questions for today. All right, well, I'll ask James Daniels to close. Oh, excuse me, hang on.
Yes,
Ian.
just an update from the question that was asked before. And thanks, David, for organising to send through this information. The current terms of reference for the zone committees include a provision that the committee does not have the authority to submit on proposed resource management or local government plans. Well, I think there's a review still underway. It's with ECAN at the moment.
I think we've finished the reviews.
Well, I got a.
Could we resolve that they be allowed to, can they,
It's an ECAN.
Yes.
They're I know, it's ridiculous. Have you got any other suggestions, Ian? How we...
Well, let's talk to ECAN and maybe informally at this stage, at this point anyway. I mean, it's a low risk sort of issue. Maybe informally we can get ECAN and the council to agree that the zone committees can make submissions to both LTPs, because remember there's ECAN
Yes,
as well doing its LTP.
because they're joint committees.
we just, as a matter of practicality, ask the chairs if they wanted to write, sort of write submissions, but submit them as individuals, you know, or as
That's
part
fine.
of the a group that they belong to that is not the zone committee,
Yeah.
and then reference all the work that the zone committee's done on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to get something on paper and in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, before the next annual plan kind of thing, maybe Leanne, you could write to Jenny and say, is this something we could change?
Yeah. Or even the collection of chairs could meet as a group and say, we're sending this in not as our zone committees, but as a representative of the chairs of the zone
Yeah.
They
committees.
have different
I mean,
things
really-
that need funding and stuff though.
I think it would have to come from the committee itself, wouldn't it, to hold any real weight? Because then they
we
get
would
staff
know that
guidance
it's
on
from
it.
there. It's just a holding
Yeah.
so that they can get a submission in front of us.
Yeah.
So would you be happy to follow that up with Jenny Huey, Leanne, on getting...
Somebody wants to take a note.
Or
on that.
should we get staff to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, surely staff should be able to deal
Okay,
with this
that's
and
great.
get,
Yeah.
get something that
Low
would
risk to
enable
do
them.
something and
Yeah.
it's not like people are going to go,
I just
"Ooh."
agree.
Let's just do it and apologise later if there's any issue.
Yep. So are you volunteering?
I heard
Yes,
that.
I'll
Oh,
volunteer.
thank you. Okay, I need a mover for this
Thanks,
report anyway, so that was good we had that little
Yeah, happy
deferral.
to.
So Jake and seconded Sarah. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. I consider that carried. James.
Kia ora anō, ka whakairia te